Vienna, the capital city of Austria. A city rich in history and culture and, according to several studies and rankings, the most livable city in the world. All those things sound great and prove that Vienna is a great place to live, which makes it almost impossible to believe that, in fact, the city of Vienna today has a lower population than it had over 100 years ago. In this video, we are going to examine the different reasons that led to this development and learn more about Vienna's changing demographics over the years. Let us first take a short look at the most important points in Vienna's history. During the 12th century, the city rose, mainly thanks to its strategically important location at the Danube River and its status as a lucrative trading hub, to one of the most important cities in the Holy Roman Empire. After the election of Duke Albrecht V of House Habsburg to German King Albrecht II in the year 1438, Vienna became the resident city of the empire, and with the coronation of Ferdinand I to Holy Roman Emperor in 1558, Vienna was declared capital city of the empire and held that position, with a few exceptions, until 1806. In the years 1529 and 1683, Vienna was the site of two siege battles, during which the city could successfully repel the besieging Ottoman armies. After the victory over the Ottomans at the second siege in 1683, and after the last outbreak of the Black Death in the year 1713, Vienna began to grow rapidly. In the year 1790, the city already had a population of 200,000 people. During the Napoleonic Wars, Vienna had been occupied by the French 2 times. It was during this time that Emperor Franz II announced the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire and the foundation of the Austrian Empire, the capital of which would become Vienna. After Napoleon had been defeated, a congress of great importance was held in Vienna. During this congress, from 1814 until 1815, political representatives of almost all European countries got together and reorganized the continent after the end of the Napoleonic Wars. The year 1849 marked the first big expansion of the city. During this year, 34 former suburbs were incorporated into Vienna. In 1890, 41 years after the first expansion, another 9 suburbs were integrated into the city. And in 1904, the former city of Floridsdorf, on the other side of the Danube River, also became part of Vienna. During the second half of the 19th century, Vienna grew rapidly, mainly through the incorporations of suburbs, but also thanks to a high rate of immigration from other parts of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and high birth rates related to the beginning industrialization. Most of those immigrants were Czechs and Slovaks, but there was also a significant number of Jewish immigrants from the eastern parts of the empire. The share of the Jewish population in Vienna rose to 12% in the year 1890. The high immigration numbers, although, also led to high tensions between the different ethnic groups in the city, and to a rise in antisemitism. For example, the mayor of Vienna from 1897 until 1910, Karl Lueger, was a big anti-Semite, who, according to many historians, influenced the political views and methods of the young Adolf Hitler, who lived in Vienna from 1908 until 1913. Hitler even mentions Lueger in his book Mein Kampf, calling him, quote, the mightiest German mayor of all time, end of quote. In the year 1910, Vienna reached its peak population of around 2.08 million people, which made it the 4th country on the planet to surpass the milestone of 2 million inhabitants, only after New York City, London and Paris. At that time, Vienna was the 5th largest city in the world, ahead of cities like Tokyo and Moscow. The median age of a Viennese at that time was 29.6 years, which is very low. To put that insane growth in population into perspective, Vienna's population grew from around 550,000 people in 1851 to 2.08 million people over a period of not even 60 years. That's an increase of more than 1.5 million people, or 278%. As you can see on this graph here, Vienna would never reach that population again. Which is odd, since most other cities at that time with a similar population grew a lot since then. Tokyo, for example, grew from a population of around 2 million people in 1910 to a population of around 14 million people today. Let us now talk about the reasons why Vienna lost its place among the biggest cities on the planet. The end of the First World War in the year 1918 also marked the end of Austria-Hungary. The non-German speaking parts of the empire, as well as South Tyrol, were no longer under Austrian control, and Austria lost its role as a major European power. This hit Vienna particularly hard. The huge city and former capital of the empire was now the capital of the much smaller Republic of Austria. The country suffered many casualties of war, and a lot of immigrants from the former Austro-Hungarian crownlands moved out of Vienna and back to their home countries. The city now had 200,000 less citizens than before the war. The population remained rather stable until 1934, but would then begin to fall again due to low birth rates. The negative birth rates of the 1930s were mainly caused by the Great Depression that started with the stock market crash in 1929. The birth rates were so low that the median age in Vienna rose to 37.4 years in 1934. That's more than 7 years more than in 1910. This population loss, however, would be compensated after the Anschluss of Austria in 1938. Vienna was turned into Gross Wien, which translates into Greater Vienna. The new National Socialist government incorporated 97 surrounding suburbs into the city and turned it into the largest city of the German Reich in terms of land area. The new Greater Vienna was now almost 5 times as big as before and had roughly 200,000 more inhabitants. It wouldn't take long, however, until Vienna's population would feel the consequences of the Second World War and the Holocaust. During the time of the National Socialist government, from 1938 until 1945, almost the entire Jewish population in Vienna, which made up around 10% of the city's population before the war, was deported, many of them killed. This was a huge blow for Vienna's cultural life. And then there were of course also the many civil and military casualties of war. After the Second World War, the population decreased by 320,000 people, or 17%, to around 1.6 million people. A fifth of the city was destroyed. In the year 1954, most area changes that have been made to create Greater Vienna were reversed. Only 17 out of the 97 suburbs originally incorporated would remain a part of the city. Vienna's population would remain stable until the 1970s. The median age of the population, however, would increase even further during this period. The average Viennese was 41.8 years old in 1971. During the 60s and 70s, Vienna was one of the demographically oldest cities in the world. As you can see here, the fertility rate, especially in the late 1970s, was extremely low in Austria's capital. In 1977, the average woman in Vienna had a fertility rate of just 1.24. That means that a woman at that time would, if she were to live to the end of her childbearing years, would only give birth to 1.24 children on average. That is way less than the rate of 2.1 needed to remain a stable population. For comparison, the fertility rate worldwide in 1977 was 3.94. Apart from the high median age, there was also a huge gender difference when it came to the people over the age of 50. For every 100 men came 170 women in this age group. Many of these women moved to Vienna in between or during the world wars and never got married or got kids because of the economic crisis. Others lost their husbands in the war. Even the many immigrants, mostly guest workers and their families from Yugoslavia and Turkey, couldn't compensate the negative birth rate during that period, and Vienna hit the 20th century population low in 1988. In that year, only 1.48 million people lived in the city, over 500,000 people less than the peak population of 2.08 million people in 1910, almost 80 years ago. From there on though, Vienna's population would once again grow and surpass 1.5 million people in the year 1991. The median age and the gender gap also decreased. There was a big increase in immigration due to external factors like the fall of the Iron Curtain, the war in Yugoslavia, and Austria joining the European Union in 1995. From 2001 to 2018, the city gained around 350,000 new citizens, which meant that 1.89 million people were living in Vienna in 2018. This dramatic increase in population was, like 100 years ago, mostly achieved through immigration. But since 2004, there had also been not a single year with a negative birth rate. Those high migration numbers turned Vienna once again into a melting pot of different nationalities and cultures. Today, 41.3% of the people living in Vienna have a foreign background. They are either foreign citizens or were born abroad. The countries of origin of those people, however, differs from those in the late 19th and early 20th century. Today, the most common countries of origin in Vienna are, besides Austria, Serbia, Turkey and Germany. According to the latest evaluation, 1,931,593 people are living in Vienna today. But it is still a long way to go until its peak population from 1910. Estimates predict that the city could reach this milestone as early as 2036. But only the future can tell if those predictions will hold up true. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.